So it was back in 2005, maybe a little before that, that I finally decided upon the definition of love and emotion in terms, having already spent 20 years developing the physics of emotion theory. Eventually, it was nagging at me that I had a difficult time explaining love clearly in terms of the theory. I didn't quite know exactly where I was most comfortable fitting it in, which seems sort of strange, as important as it is, and as much as we know it's emotional in nature. But I knew it wasn't one of the basic emotions per se, because it was too chameleon-like. It had too many faces, had too many manifestations. So, what was the essential quality, knowing that it's emotional, what was the essential quality of love in all its different forms? Like, what could we tease out and say this factor, this quality was evident? And if it's not evident, it's not love. And so I settled upon this. It actually came to me when I was taking a shower, thinking about it. Shower and jogging is where I get some of my best ideas. So I decided that it had to be an interest, that it was primary, interest being among the primary, most primary of the basic emotions, the most basic of the basic emotions. And in fact, interest does tend to work that way. It serves as an accompaniment for almost all the other emotional responses when they get triggered, because it's required to navigate in the world, period. And so if you think about it, wanting to navigate in the world means at least the creature's active, the human's active. Not wanting to navigate in the world, there's either tremendous fatigue and it's temporary, or there's psychological fatigue and it's chronic, like depression. I don't have any interest in going anywhere or doing anything. So you can see the foundational aspect of all things emotional occurring in the domain of our interest. But interest almost always, there could be pure interest, and yet interest is most often identified in kind of an obvious sort of sense when it's paired with desire. I'm interested in having this. I'm interested in getting this. And in fact, if you use the word desire loosely, all the things you wish you didn't have to deal with are also desires. I wish I didn't have loss. I wish I didn't have pain. I wish I didn't have a shortage of time. I wish I wasn't fatigued. All the things that we desire. I want to be not fatigued. I want to be not bored. But in a way, that's also a negative valence. There's a not want, right? And then there's a not interest. And so I don't want, I desire this not, and the interest that I have to generate to make sure I don't get it is lamented. It's problematic interest. So at any rate, this is just beginning to expound on the issue of some of the nuanced complexities of interest itself. So I recognize that as love shows up in many, many contexts before there's content. Like my loved one shows up, I don't know if they're happy, sad, they need something, they don't need something, they give me a gift, they're, in a bad mood, they might even hurt me. Like I'm already loving them, I'm already coming from a certain form of interest. And so if I characterize that particular form of interest and distill it to its essence, there's committed, benevolent interest. So it has that committed benevolence as the quality. And if you just say there's only benevolence, well, really what you're saying is there's a marginal commitment, because there wouldn't be benevolence if there wasn't some commitment. And if you say, well, there's no benevolence, well, then we have to look at the alternative to this being love. You may be committed to harming somebody. And so hence, love has its opposite, committed benevolent interest. So I'm looking for ways to make you miserable and cause you pain and as the definition says, cause you harm or evil. That's, okay, evil has to be defined, but it is sort of the dark side of the human heart, and it's connected to a whole lot of evil. And it's connected to a whole lot of damage, and in terms of its relationship to love, I developed that at great length. And I talk about the love contempt continuum as it applies to every human life in every single moment of existence. Any given moment, you are opening your eyes to the world with parts per million of love in the mix of your set of motivations. And so you could be predominantly angry this moment, and yet the parts per million of your love would not necessarily be changed. It's just by reference to the local spike in love, we don't feel it, we don't see it necessarily. Although I submit, if you look close, you see it in a modification of the anger, because if the anger was happening in a space of committed malevolent interest, it would look qualitatively different, even though in both cases you would say it's anger. So the malevolent version of sadness, well, that really means you're trying to cause sadness. If you're looking out for yourself, if you are contemptuous toward yourself, you may be causing losses. Right? You're doing harm to yourself that way. At any rate, just to get back to the kind of announcement that this represents, I've decided in terms of the development of this idea that I need to actually qualify right up front rather than explain it as a corollary. This is really part of the essence of it, that this idea of the interest being there of a certain kind, and of its governing most of our other interests, or at least influencing in a governing kind of way, an powerful influence sort of way, all of our other emotional responses. So it's really meta emotional. And so we really have meta interest. We have an interest in certain forms or kinds or qualities of interest. I am interested in you based on love, which means I'm interested in being interested in you in this way. Almost like I love that I love you. See, that's the full embrace of love. I'm not like shy that I love you. See, there's fear in there, right? I love you and I'm afraid of it, right? So that, what is that? There's this sort of mixed interest. I want to open up. I want to consume all of you in terms of experience or connection. My wanting to know you, to understand you, to relate to you, to be able to contribute to you, to serve you, to support you, to shower you with kindness, like a loving parent would do to their child. I'm already interested in having that relationship. I'm already interested in having that interest. I'm already interested and committed to having that interest be sustainable over time. So my commitment and my benevolence show up even in the way I tend to handle interest. I'm not interested in entertaining thoughts about hurting you. I actually worked with an individual. Well, it turns out her mother was severely mentally ill. I mean, she had schizophrenia. And so this, rather sharp, sensitive young woman had a fear of an impulse to put her finger through the soft spot of a baby's head. I laughed, but I mean, this is the funny human mind. And so then she began to doubt her ability to resist the thought. It was causing her a lot of angst. And of course, she was very interested in keeping her interest on the benevolent side of the fence. But think about it. What if there was a little envy about her sister having a baby? And this, upset little girl's, unfinished business inside my client had a devious little thought. And some twitch inside her both, in a way, got behind the thought, or felt like she might. And then in horror, she's trying forcefully to get behind the idea that she's loving and that all her intentions are benevolent. I didn't get a chance, actually, to get through to the heart of that matter with her. But I would bet the dollar to donuts that what she would find out is that there was some sort of envy or something like that. That is the stuff of, mild contempt. And so it was tugging at her. And of course, as it shows up parts per million, it kind of violates our sense that our love is good or pure. How do you do love and contempt at the same time and give yourself full credit for being loving? I don't think you do. I don't think people do that. I think they recognize their love is diluted or fake, like a mirage, wishful thinking. You're a loving wannabe, not a real person who loves. And that can be horrifying when you want to define yourself differently. But even there, you see the person's horrified because it already exists that they have some interest in being loving in terms of how they experience their interest. I would like my interest to be loving. I'm interested in that. And I think the whole world is, including the most contemptuous, but it's not pure, it's not strong, it's not equally pure, equally strong in everybody. But it's there. I believe theoretically it's there to hook, to get a hold of eventually, to set the stage, to serve as a seedling for more to come, more love and commitment to being loving, more interest in being loving, so that you begin to actually, instead of finding yourself slipping into contempt, you begin to try to crawl out of your contempt-based experience of the person, of the world, of whatever it is, where the love is beginning to be threatened. So I'm pretty excited about this, bringing this a step forward. I think this is kind of a breakthrough in terms of my understanding, and I think it covers better the fact pattern, particularly of our mixed bag of, so many parts per million contempt, so many parts per million of love, and how we might actively and deliberately, with awareness, do something about the ratio. Let's defeat contempt and let's enhance our love.